So the Vedic knowledge is very vast. It's very contains many different types of knowledge. There's different parts of the Vedas, but the Bhagavad Gita is the essence. Bhagavad Gita is the essence, Sara, the essence of the Vedic knowledge. Part of the Vedic knowledge is it's called the Rig Veda. The Rig Veda, the Sama Veda, the Tata Veda, and the Yajna Veda. And then we have Upanishads. They're dealing with different types of information. Not all of them are dealing with spiritual knowledge. For instance, Sama Veda deals something with music and the Indian system of music, which is much more sophisticated than our Western system of music with the 8 notes for an octave in the scale. And then we have in the Rig Veda there is a section of the Rig Veda called Ayurvedic knowledge, and this deals with medicine. In other words, also within the Vedic scriptures. The Vedic scriptures were scriptures describing how to conduct one's life. So obviously this includes medical knowledge, because that's part of living. Even though you may be devotee and practicing self-realization, still you may get ill. So there is need for medicine, no doubt. But Ayurvedic medicine is different to this allopathic medicine that we have in the West. It is actually far more sophisticated. And I'll give an example that according to Ayurvedic medicine, this life has illness is due to imbalance of different doshas within the body. And these imbalances of these doshas or life airs in the body can be determined by one's pulse. So a Vaidya is a Ayurvedic physician. He is able to determine your ailment simply by feeling your pulse. Doesn't have to put a thermometer in. He doesn't have to put a, what are these things called for pressure, blood pressure. Anyhow, this thing, for blood pressure. He doesn't have to do an examination. Simply on pulse. And according to the Nadi Sastra, which is part of the Rig Veda, a qualified Vaidya or Ayurvedic doctor is able to determine 3,038 different types of pulses. Now, for us, there's like only one, and usually we can't even find that. We have a job just finding our own pulse. But according to Nadi Sastra, there's 3,038 different pulses. So you have to become very specialized to be able to determine those pulses. And by the strength of the pulse and by the type of pulse, it's in one of these 3,038 categories, one can determine if there's an imbalance of one's doshas, which means kapha, vita, kapha, vaya, and pitta. And from that one can determine if there is some illness within the body and what part of the organ it is and so forth. So this is a whole science. So this is coming from the Vedas. So Ayurvedic knowledge, Ayurvedic medical knowledge is a lot more sophisticated than what we have here in the West. So that's just medical knowledge. So when we come to spiritual knowledge, the Vedic teachings are even more sophisticated. So Bhagavad Gita is the essence not of medical knowledge or architecture or musical knowledge. No, it is the essence of spiritual knowledge, Bhagavad Gita. So this verse I'll read tonight is the most important verse in Bhagavad Gita, 1865. In Sanskrit, Mamano bhavama bhakto madhyaji mam namaskaro mama veshisi satyamti pratijani priyosami. English. Krishna is saying, always think of me, become my devotee, worship me and offer your homage unto me. Thus you'll come to me without fail. I promise you this because you're my very dear friend. So this is Lord Krishna's instruction. And this is coming at the very end of the Bhagavad Gita. If someone talks something, then it's understood. They will conclude things. If it's a balanced and proper talk, they will conclude it. So their concluding statements can be taken as most important, more important than their initial statements. So this is coming at the very end of the Bhagavad Gita. There's only 13 more verses and the Bhagavad Gita is finished. So this is considered very important. So Krishna, who is God, is saying, always think of me, Mamana, become my devotee, Mad Bhakto, worship me, Madhyaji, and offer your homage unto me, Mam Namaskuru. Thus you'll come to me without fail, I promise you this, because you're my very dear friend. So I read a purport by our spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. The most confidential part of knowledge is that one should become a pure devotee of Krishna and always think of him and act for him. One should not become an official meditator. Life should be so molded that one will always have the chance to think of Krishna. One should always act in such a way that all his daily activities are in connection with Krishna. He should arrange his life in such a way that throughout the 24 hours he cannot but think of Krishna. And the Lord's promise is that anyone who is in such pure Krishna consciousness will certainly return to the abode of Krishna, where he will be engaged in the association of Krishna face to face. This most confidential part of knowledge is spoken to Arjuna because he is the dear friend of Krishna. Everyone who follows the path of Arjuna can become a dear friend to Krishna and attain the same perfection as Arjuna. These words stress that one should concentrate his mind upon Krishna, the very form with two hands carrying a flute, the bluish boy, the beautiful face, and peacock feathers in his hair. There are descriptions of Krishna found in Brahma Samhita and other literatures. One should fix his mind on this original form of Godhead, Krishna. One should not even divert his attention to other forms of the Lord. The Lord has multi-forms, such as Vishnu, Narayana, Ram, and Varaha, but a devotee should concentrate his mind on the form that was present before Arjuna. Concentration of the mind on the form of Krishna constitutes the most confidential part of knowledge, and this is disclosed to Arjuna because Arjuna is the most dear friend of Krishna's. Translation again. Always think of me, become my devotee, worship me and offer your homage unto me. Thus you'll come to me without fail, I promise you this, because you're my very dear friend. So Prabhupada says here that if one thinks of Krishna 24 hours a day, then the Lord's promise is that anyone who is in such pure Krishna consciousness will certainly return to the abode of Krishna, where he will be engaged in the association of Krishna face to face. So this is not some face to face. This is not some poet's metaphor or exaggeration. One will actually be able to see God face to face. Just like you can see me and I can see you. So one will actually be able to see God face to face. But one has to become qualified. Just like if you want to see Nelson Mandela face to face. It's not so easy, especially now. He's such an important person. Maybe before. So if you want to see even an important person in this material world, the President of America, it's not such an easy thing. You may have to wait some time. You may have to make an appointment. You may have to go through his secretaries. And even then you may not see him, because you may not be a very important person yourself. So what does he want to see you for? Huh? What does the President of America want to see a nobody for? You have to be either, you're going to give him a big donation or something. You have to, you have to be important. So in order to see Krishna face to face, it is not that you just make an appointment, you can just see him. You also have to be important. You have to be an important person in order to see Krishna face to face, in order for him to see you, and in order for you to see him. Same thing. When you see him, he sees you. It's the same thing. You have to be important. So in the eyes of God, how does one become important? We know in the material world, in order to see a big businessman, If you're also a businessman, then he's more likely to see you. If you're going to propose some business deal, then he will see you. So how will you, what is important in terms of God? What is important? What is he looking for? Is it that if we're very wealthy, then in the eyes of God we become important? Is that attracting God? Now, wealth, material wealth, does not actually attract God, Krishna. If we become powerful controller, politician, some dictator, some very influential, powerful person controlling some country, does that attract God, Krishna? No, that also doesn't attract him. The one thing that attracts the attention of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is love and devotion. This is called bhakti. Bhakti means love and devotion. It is bhakti which attracts Krishna or God. Bhakti. And actually it is only bhakti that attracts him. It is described in Bhagavad Gita, Naham Veda, na tapasya, na dena, na chujaya. It is not by simply dry study of scripture. It is not simply by charity. It is not simply by severe austerities. And it is not by official worship that I am attracted, that I can be seen. How is it? Bhakti mama vijanti yavanishasmi tatvadaha. Only by devotional service. Bhakti tvananya sakya. There are so many verses describing that only by this process of bhakti, or devotional service, or love, can I actually be attracted. So this is what attracts God, Krishna. God, or Krishna, he is the supreme controller, and he is controlling everything. But he is attracted, even more than attracted, but the Supreme Lord is controlled by someone who has some devotion or bhakti. That God is controlling everything. He's within every atom. Dantasta paramanu charantarishtam. Paramanu. What is a paramanu? We read this morning. Atom. So the Lord is in every atom, and he's controlling everything. Not a blade of grass moves without his sanction. This particular universe we're living in is the smallest, and according to Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 3rd canto, division of time, this universe diameter is very small, 500 million yojans, 4 billion miles, not one smallest. And there are millions of universes, in each universe millions of planets. On each planet so many species of life, human species, animal species. And Krishna, God, is in the heart of every living being. He's controlling everything. So he is Ishvara Parama, he is the supreme controller. Param means supreme, best, highest. Supreme Ishvara. Ishvara means controller. Ishvara Parama Krishna. But God himself, Krishna himself, is controlled by a devotee who has this pure love for him. He's obliged. He is actually not only attracted, but controlled by the love of his pure devotees. So this is like a secret. This is being revealed here in the Bhagavad Gita. That the supreme controller, who's controlling everyone, is himself controlled by the love of his devotee. So this is what Krishna is teaching Arjuna. This is the message of Bhagavad Gita. That this process of bhakti yoga, bhakti meaning love and devotion, yoga meaning to link with God, this method of linking with the Supreme Lord through love and devotion is topmost. There are many systems of yoga, but this system of bhakti yoga is topmost. Yoginam api sarvisham akitenratmana sharavam vachitayamam same yuktato mamata. Of all yogis, that yogi who has love and devotion, who worships me with faith, he is most intimately united with me. He is the best of all. That is my opinion. Krishna is saying. Krishna is giving his opinion in Bhagavad Gita, not my opinion. Chapter 6, text 47, Krishna is saying that is my opinion. So, if we can develop, manifest, display some type of affection, sneha, or love for God, Krishna, then this attracts him. And this is actually the golden life, to develop prema pamatamahan, some love for the Supreme Lord. And by the force and the strength of this love, then Krishna will reveal himself, and you can be engaged in his association face to face. Just like a magnet attracts metal. So in one's heart, if you manifest, if you're able to, one has to practice, but if one is able to practice and learn how to manifest some type of love for the Supreme Lord, then this attracts Krishna. He will come. And according to our love, according to the intensity of our love, he will reveal himself. Tachi Krishna Naminina Bhavagriham Indriya Sevan Mukhi Jivadu Evam Spratadaha. Padma Purana describes that according to our love, he will reveal himself. We cannot understand the Supreme Lord with our blunt material senses. That means our mind and our different senses. We cannot see with our eyes. When it is said here to see face to face, then one has to see with one's heart, tinged with the salve of love. Premanjana Jada Bhakti Valochena. One sees with one's heart, when one's heart is covered or saturated in love or prema. So with our blunt material senses and with our mind, we cannot conceive or see God. Even within this material world, there are so many things we cannot see, we cannot understand. Even with our own body, even within your own body, there are so many things you cannot see and understand. Just like later we're going to have some prasadam. So you take that food and you digest it. So we're not aware of the biological process of digestion. What exactly is happening in our stomach, how the food is being broken up, enzymes, this and that, how it is being distributed to different parts of the body, how it is going through into the intestines and the lower intestines. We're not aware of all of this. It's happening, but we can't figure it out. It's not that we're conscious exactly what is happening. Heart is beating so many times every minute, 60 to 80 times a minute, 100,000 times a day. We take it for granted. Are you thinking, oh, my heart beat 100,000 times a day? It's almost the end of the day, so about 80,000 times now. Are we aware of that? This thing called the heart is beaten 80,000 times. Certain things we just take for granted. We're not aware. So with our blunt material senses, there are so many things we're not aware of. Actually, we know very little, really. So definitely we're not going to be able to understand God. We cannot understand the unlimited with the mind, which is limited. One cannot understand the unlimited with the limited mind. But when Krishna wants to show himself, then we can understand him. That is, by his mercy, he will show himself, he will reveal himself. So what makes him do that? He will do that to his devotee. He'll do that to anyone, man, woman, Indian, European, anyone who has sufficient love for him. So based on our love, he will show himself or reveal himself accordingly. So the process of religion, God consciousness, be it Hinduism, Islam, whatever faith, is to try to develop some love for God. So there are 2 points to understand here now. We're trying to develop our love for God, Krishna. So the first thing is that in order to love someone, love is manifested. There are ways that love is manifested. When a man loves a woman, and vice versa, or when husband and wife love their children, this love is shown. So how is it shown? How is love manifested? What is the physical manifestation of this abstract thing called love? By service, yes. If a husband and wife love their children, then they will serve their children, which means the man will work, he will raise some money, with the idea of feeding and housing and educating and clothing his family. There is service. The wife serves the children. She will cook, she maybe will do some housework. There is some type of service. There is a service attitude. So love is manifested through service. The physical manifestation of this thing called love is service. So therefore, if we are trying to develop our love for Krishna, first there has to be some service. So this is called devotional service. And this is what we are practicing. This is what Krishna is teaching Arjuna. There is one chapter called devotional service in the Bhagavad Gita. So devotional service, the art of serving the Lord in a mood of devotion. So one has to practice devotional service. So the first step in devotional service is to chant the Lord's name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. This is the first step. Then there are other things also one can do. Other types of methods of serving the Lord. And these can be learned. Step by step we can learn. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smarana, Parasegnanshana, Vandam. There are 9 kinds of ways of serving Krishna. Then there is something called Panch Bhakti. Panch Bhakti is Sadhu Sangha, associating with devotees, hearing Bhagavatam, Harinam, Sadhu Sangha, Nam Kirtan, Shravanam, Bhagavat Shravana, hearing Bhagavatam, worshipping deity, and Mathuravasi, living with other devotees or associating with devotees. It's called Panch Bhakti. And then of those 5, Nam Kirtan is the most important. So this first method of devotional service is to chant the name of God. So then our devotional service starts, and then there's some possibility of some love coming. Maybe a little bit later on some love will come. So first point to understand is love is manifested through service. So there has to be some type of service. Then another point to understand is that in order to love somebody, you have to have some information about that person. Is it not? What is the sense of this statement? That I love this person, but this person is living on the other side of Mitchell's Plain, and I've never been there, and I haven't, and I don't know where, and I don't know what they look like, and I don't know anything about them. I love this person, I love this lady. She is staying in Kailicha, and I don't know what road, I don't know what house, I don't know what she looks like, I don't know anything about her, but I love her. Now, does that have any meaning? Then you can understand that this doesn't have so much meaning. So people are saying like this, I love God. Many times we hear this, sometimes from our Christian brothers, people like this. I love God, I love God. So then we may ask or inquire, what is your conception of God? And they don't have a conception of God. They're not sure. Or they'll say one thing and the next minute they'll say something else. In other words, their conception or understanding of God is not clear at all. Sometimes they will think that God is a force, that He's an energy, that He's a light, or God is love. So we agree He is a force, He is energy, He is light. You can say He's love, but He's also more than that. He's much more than that as well. God is manifest throughout His creation, as His energy. So everywhere is God's energy, so God is everywhere. But He's also more than that. God ultimately is also a person. He is a personal form. Satchidananda Vigraha, He is a spiritual form. Not an ordinary material form like your form or mine, but He is a spiritual form. So in order to love God, Krishna, we have to know something about this form. And not just about His descriptions of His form, but also, what does He do? Does He just sit down and look down at the material world and laugh at us? What does He do? So here Prabhupada is saying, these words stress that one should concentrate his mind upon Krishna. Then there's a description. The very form with two hands carrying a flute. So he carries a flute. The bluish boy with a beautiful face and peacock feathers in his hair. There are descriptions of Krishna found in Brahma Samhita and other literatures. So these are not poetic descriptions. These are found in authorized scriptures like Brahma Samhita, Srimad Bhagavatam. These scriptures are presented. Lord Brahma spoke Brahma Samhita. So not an ordinary human being did not speak or compile Bhagavatam and Brahma Samhita. Not ordinary human. Vyasadeva spoke Bhagavatam. He's a literary incarnation of God. Brahma spoke Brahma Samhita. Brahma at this time was self-realized, not ordinary at all. So we can take these descriptions as bona fide. So herein it is said, the Lord's very form, two hands carrying a flute. He carries a flute. The bluish boy, he is bluish in color. These descriptions are given. He is bluish in color. Some people may ask, why is he bluish? Why is he not black? But this is the description of God. This is how he wants to be. There's no symbolic reason. He is bluish because he is bluish. Peacock feather in his hair. So if we read these descriptions of Krishna, then we can have some idea of the appearance of God. So then if we try to develop our love, then we can fix our mind on something. Otherwise, to love something impersonal actually is impossible. You cannot love something impersonal because it doesn't reciprocate. Like many people try to have a relationship with Table Mountain. It's impersonal. It's a material object. And they always thinking of Table Mountain, but Table Mountain doesn't reciprocate. You may go out of your way to serve Table Mountain by different methods, but it doesn't reciprocate. You may try to love Cape Town. We have the stickers, I love Cape Town. But Cape Town is not going to reciprocate. It's not like Cape Town reciprocates. You may try to love your car. People like this. They develop some infatuation with a material object like a car or something. We see this, especially in the Indian community, that persons get up. They get up very early in the morning, like 5:30. First thing, they wash their car. They're out there washing their car, even before they've washed. They're doing their puja to their car. And they spend so much time in their car and this and that. But car is not going to reciprocate. It's not going to speak back to you. It's not going to give you any affection back, because it's an impersonal. It's impersonal. So if we are trying to love an energy or a light or cosmic consciousness or some force, then we should know if it's impersonal, it's not going to reciprocate. And real love means reciprocation. The meaning of love means there is beloved and the one who loves. So in a higher sense, love means person to person. You cannot actually love something impersonal. Both the beloved and the person who loves have to be persons. Then there is some meaning to this word love. So we're trying to develop supreme love for the Supreme Person. Then it must be that supreme object of affection is a person. So the Vedic scriptures describe that it is Krishna, and they give some little description of his form. And if we read further, there are descriptions also of what he does. So then one can fix one's mind. And the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita is that one should fix his mind on the original form of Godhead. And one should not divert his attention to anything else. One should not even divert his attention to other forms of the Lord. although in one sense they're non-different. Or to speak of material forms, like divert your attention to material forms within this material world. One should not divert one's attention even to that. And one should try to place one's mind at the lotus feet of the Lord. And this constitutes the most confidential part of knowledge. Prabhupada is saying concentration of the mind on the form of Krishna constitutes the most confidential part of knowledge. So many different levels of knowledge, and even in terms of spiritual life, many levels of knowledge. But the most confidential part of knowledge is to place one's mind, mana, at the lotus feet of Krishna. Savaya mana Krishna pradara vindayo. So this is the most confidential part of knowledge. So we should try to do this. And initially, this is done, we can start this practice through the very strict practice of chanting every day the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. This is the first step. This person is now in Cape Town. They're getting these ultralight bicycles, and they're going around with their tight things, and these helmets, and they shoot around, and they climb up, they cycle up, but you can't cycle up here. But these other mountains nearby, the one near, where is it? Down near the mountain. Huh? Can you speak that other way? Anyhow, so they're training. They train. And every day they train, and then they build their muscles up, and they can do it. So in order to focus the mind on Krishna, you have to train the mind. It's not that you can do it straight away, you have to train the mind. And it takes some time. And the more serious you take, for example, cycling, the more seriously you apply yourself to training your body, your legs, and cycling, then the better cyclist you'll be, the more you'll get out of it in terms of fitness and things like that. So the more seriously you start to practice Krishna consciousness, this chanting, training your mind, then the better you'll be able to fix your mind on the lotus feet of the Lord. So it is up to us. It's not that it's going to happen overnight, and we can. It is not like a rasgula that one eats and finish. One has to train. It may take some time. So this is the process of Krishna consciousness, and this is what we are learning, and this is what we're trying to teach others. That while they're performing their duties, responsibilities, working, housework, whatever it may be, they try to introduce this authorized process of Krishna consciousness, whereby they train the mind to be able to think of the Supreme Lord in a mood of loving devotional service. So, any questions? Yes, Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual master, has said that it is very difficult to approach directly Krishna. But devotees take advantage of Krishna's compassionate nature, represented by Radharani, and they approach her in order to get the mercy of Krishna. So Radharani is the compassionate nature of Krishna. She is the compassionate nature of Krishna. So one may approach her in order to get the mercy of Krishna. And when we chant Hare Krishna, that is included in the mantra. Because Hare means what? Hare means the energy of God. That's the lower understanding. The deeper understanding, what energy of God? So many energies. Royal energy, Kala, Kama, Guna. So many. Purusha Shakti, Vividaya Shri, and multifarious energies. The highest energy is the Dini Shakti, Swarup Shakti. So that's actually what I mean. There was the Hare by referring to that, the Dini Shakti potency, which is Krishna's concept. So it's contained in the Maha Mantra, although we may not immediately realize that or understand it. It's also there. Any other questions? Prabhupada ki jai.